So now I have it at the right pixel dimensions. It's 30 inches by 40 inches at 300 pixels per inch. So the pixel dimensions are 9,000 by 12,000. So before you start bringing your images in, you should have pixel dimensions that are 9,000 by 12,000. Or if it's horizontal, it would be 12,000 by 9,000. Right? But the only place where you're actually going to try to make your image is on top of your sketch. That's your composition. This is all working space. So I know I want to use that one. I was thinking I would use this one as well. So let's bring it in, then let's move it down. And I want to make sure that I hit return to place them. They'll come in with transform box, but they're smart objects. I'm going to zoom in on those layers a little bit, right? So you can see that. So you can see the smart objects, but my sketch is not a smart object. So I'm going to lock with the padlock my sketch and lock my gray background. And now I'll keep bringing in source material. So I know I want to use that. I really liked this reference. But I'm going to push it off to the side for now. Hit return to place it. I was thinking of using maybe these in the middle ground. Just hit return to place it. I'm not even sizing them yet. I'm just getting them all in there, all the magazine pages. And then for the background, I thought this was really useful. That there. There's a lot of play involved with compositing, like just trying things out, seeing how they work. I think this could be really useful, especially those clouds. And then this far mountain. And then lastly, this was going to be my Olympus, this little building up here. All right, so I've got a lot. I've even got more than 5 already. And I have others if I need backups. I have some rocks for the extreme foreground. I can bring those in. On and on and on. Even if they go off the edge of my overly big canvas, that information is not lost. I am going to avoid using this kind of thing, these AI, just because even though they're made to look photographic, when I actually look at the pixels, you see how there's no noise in them at all. So they're more like digital paintings. Whereas if I look at non-AI generated kind of architecture, and there's plenty of photos of temples and buildings, and I zoom in, you'll see there's a lot more variation in those pixel textures. So that's what a photographic digital image looks like versus an AI digital image. So unless I wanted to make it all out of AI kind of painterly images, which I wouldn't recommend because they don't have rational light sources, try not to mix photography with AI images, even if you are, and that's why I'm not demonstrating generating images for this. Instead, it's about finding the pixels that are useful to you through ones that have already been posted. And Pixabay is a great resource. All right, now I'm going to pick the one layer in layer organization that I know is behind every other layer. So that's going to be the sky. What do I want to use for my sky? And I'm thinking this one. Not that one. This one, which is a photo of Mount Everest, is going to be my background. So I'm going to move that down. And remember, the shortcut for moving a layer down is select it and then use Command left bracket. I'm going to move it down so it's just on top of my sketch. And then I'm going to turn off all the other layers for right now, whether it's 4 other layers or even more. I've got maybe too many, but I'll show you how we can quickly put this together. So I'm going to use the Move tool, and I'm going to move that smart object to the background. And I might kind of line it up with where that mountain is, right? So there's the mountain. If I turn it off, I can see where my mountaintop is. If I wanted to, I could even take the opacity down and line it up that way. But then I want to bring the opacity back up. Okay, this is the only layer that you don't need to cut out from because it's your furthest back collage layer. Everything else is going to get cut and stacked up on top of this. What do I mean? Well, if my next layer is the mountain range like this mountain range, which is already cut out because it came from Pixabay, is just going to go right on top of that. So I don't need to carefully cut out this bottom part, which I'm not going to use. All I have to do is cover it up with other stuff. But there is another layer I was interested in. Bless you. And it's this one for the far background. This photo, another photo of probably Mount Everest or something similar, right? So maybe this is the next one I want to put on top instead of the other one. So I'm going to move it down so it's on top of my sky and my background. But the problem is when I move this one where I want it, it covers up that sky that I want. So this is where I need to cut it out. But just like magazines and traditional collage, you can do different things to cut a magazine, right? So we're going to rough cut. And if it likes, you can think of this as tearing. When you want to tear something out, you're not trying to be pretty precise, but you're trying to preserve the edge that you want to cleanly cut later. So this is rough cutting. And I'm going to use the lasso tool for this, which is right underneath the move tool in that drawer. The lasso. And I'm just going to roughly select around this mountain that I want to use. And I know I don't need the trees, even though they'll get covered up by other mountains, right? So I'm just going to rough cut or tear around it. So when you do that with the lasso, you see the little dotted line? Think of that as drawing a dotted line on a magazine. That dotted line is where you will cut, but I haven't cut it yet. All I've done is drawn the dotted line. To cut it, I hit Command J, and that will duplicate that lassoed selection onto a new layer. I just cut it out like a cookie cutter. Now, what do you do with the magazine page after you've cut out what you wanted from it? What do you do with the leftovers? You throw them away. So I'm going to now take the layer underneath and delete. So I just have my cutout. And all in one step, it will rasterize the layer and cut it out and allow me to place it and see where it fits. So maybe I put it here. And this is compositing digitally, so I can do things like Option Command T and transform it, and I can hold down Shift and I can stretch it. I can even warp it, right? And make it kind of a more bizarre fantasy kind of shape. Like maybe a little lopsided like that. Okay. The next layer, it's not that. It was going to be these mountains, right? So now I'm going to move those down. And then I'm going to place them. Now, right away, I have a problem like I had with my emoji, in that I can't really see clearly my sketch anymore. It's been covered up. So if you remember onion skinning for the emoji, how do we bring our plan up above everything, but still see through it so we can know what we're doing? We're going to go back down to our base layer and we're going to duplicate it, our sketch. Duplicate the sketch with Command J. Move it up above everything, and I'm using Command right bracket for that. And then we're going to take the opacity of that copy of the sketch and move it to about 20%. That way, I can see my sketched lines, where Olympus is, where the hills are going to be, where this big foreground rock city is. and my eye is going to be nicely led back. All right. So what's next? I don't need to cut this out. It's already been cut out because I found it from Pixabay and it had an empty background as a PNG. So that was nice. It's designed for this. What's the next asset I want? Maybe one of these rock cities. But I need to cut this one out. Oh, but notice I tried to move it and I accidentally grabbed my onion skin layer. So how do we prevent it from grabbing the onion skin layer? We lock it with the padlock. Right? So now I have auto select layer on for the move tool. It allows me to move this stuff and to roughly cut it out. So I have this kind of hilltop temple. It's nicely multicultural. My Olympus is going to be kind of a more grounded kind of Olympus. So you think of a lot of mountain top temples on the lesser mountains around it. And I can also do it this way. There I didn't lasso around what I wanted to keep. I lassoed around what I wanted to get rid of. But this is a less direct way. Because if I hit delete now, it's going to say, do you want to rasterize it? And then I have to say, oh yeah, of course, sorry, I have to rasterize it. And then I can hit delete. So better, and I'll show you with the next one, better to lasso around what you want and to actually Option Command T while it's still a smart object. And I'm going to squeeze this one a little bit and maybe even distort it a little bit. Maybe even warp it a tiny bit. Because if I do all of those kind of size manipulations while it's still a smart object, I'm going to get better quality than if I rasterize it and then do those things. But now I am going to just rough cut around what I want to keep with my lasso, and then Command J, and then throw away the layer behind it. All right, so I've got a nice kind of vertical composition here. It's kind of zigzagging back. What's next? These big rocks. If ever you need to fit everything on the screen, just hit Command 0. And I think these big rocks would be nice. But I want them behind the other element. So I'm going to move them down behind that foreground. There we go. And then where's the other one? I think I want to move them behind this too. So you're choosing kind of how far back certain things are. And then I might want to decide, oh, I want to drop this a little bit lower down. Okay, and then what do I need to cut out from these rocks? Well, let's turn off the layers in front of them and then do a rough cut. I basically just want, this rock ridge right here. And what's nice about these rocks is they're very vertical, right? So I'm selecting around what I want to keep, then hitting Command J. And I'm deleting the smart object. Why is it important to delete the smart object? Can't you just leave it turned off? Well, Photopea is freeware. Freeware takes processing from the browser itself. So it's not using all of the processing power of the computer, it's just using the processing power of Chrome, which means if you have a lot of tabs open, I have quite a few, that limits it, right? The more you can do to limit the amount of memory it needs to keep while running, the better the program will work. So if you have a layer you don't need anymore, like a smart object that you can always give back by just loading it in again from your resources, you can go ahead and delete it. All right, now I can also try things like flipping it, right? So I have those tall mountains. Maybe I want to bring this one down a little bit more to show off more of those tall mountains, like that. Or maybe I want to Option Command T and flip this horizontally. No, it looked better before, right? I can stretch it, I can play with it,